this?
A market list. The town of Cothal's 2 clicks to the south, and I'm sending you both on a supply run. Oh, and don't even think about coming back without at least 1 Melu Run fruit. Clear?
Clear.
Every long-running show tends to suffer from a phenomenon known as the filler episode, and Star Wars is no different. While we had that awesome 2D animated Clone Wars show that ran from 2003 to 2005, the 3D animated Clone Wars was our first proper television series, and that show has, well, quite a bit of filler. I don't mean to disparage Clone Wars. I love the show, but some episodes are kind of tough to get through. Even high-budget live-action shows like The Mandalorian, The Book of Boba Fett, and Andor have their fair share of filler, despite having very few episodes per season. As a matter of fact, if I were to give one major criticism across the entire Star Wars TV franchise, it would be that they don't seem to know what to do with filler episodes. Well, except for Star Wars Rebels, that is.
I don't believe it.
No, seriously, I mean it. Look, if you get past the common criticisms that fans have of the art style and the more kid-friendly tone, then Rebels is an absolute masterpiece of a show that is far more rewatchable than all the other shows to date. I mean, I absolutely love Clone Wars, but I still must force myself through the first 2 seasons every time I rewatch it. Even The Mandalorian, Andor, and The Bad Batch have episodes that really require some discipline to sit through. But with Rebels, I was hooked from Jump Street.
That was weird.
And that still hasn't changed. This doesn't mean that there aren't a few episodes that stand out as boring, but almost the entire show is rewatchable. For those of you out there that love Rebels, you probably agree. The more I watch and read reviews about the show, I'm convinced that Star Wars fans put it into the category of best thing since the original trilogy or completely skippable in the canon.
Then you will die.
Each can have their own opinion. Regardless, Rebels has handled the problem of filler better than all the other shows so far. So why is this show so much more rewatchable than all the other shows? How did Rebels solve the problem of boring filler episodes? Well, it's because Rebels isn't just Star Wars.
Nice and quiet like.
But it's also an 80s and 90s family sitcom. One bit of credit that I will give to Disney, and I don't give them a whole lot, is that the current team at Lucasfilm is more than willing to explore different motifs with their different projects. Andor is a noir spy thriller, for instance, with gritty characters and moral ambiguity laced throughout its wonderful script. And The Mandalorian is a western reminiscent of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, or Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, with blazing adventures,
Okay.
colorful characters,
A man of your skill should make short work of this.
and awesome gun shootouts. Star Wars Rebels is no different. It's a story far more parallel to the original trilogy, a family drama, and myths retold.
Old legends. Stories told to us as younglings in the temple.
There's always a bit of truth in legends.
It is done, however, using an episodic structure that's quite distinctive. But more on Rebels motif in a minute. First, how does this show create a sense of family and mythic storytelling to endear the entire Ghost crew to the viewer? The family unit is so strong in the show that I would argue that not since Anakin and Padme have we benefited from this level of strong family bond in Star Wars. When any member of the Ghost crew is in trouble, there is no question of loyalty within the family.
Zeb!
Told you he'd be fine.
Zeb, you made it!
We picked up your beacon. We were so worried.
Because they
It wasn't
are
so
family.
bad.
Time and time again, each person will put aside their own personal wants for the current needs of other members in their family. Also, like the original trilogy, Rebels utilizes archetypes to provide character depth and inevitable dramatic interaction between characters. Archetypes like
Thought it was a moment that needed to be immortalized.
Very creative. Sounds like someone I used to know.
I am Kanan Jarrus, Jedi Knight.
These archetypes are both good for dramatic storytelling and recreating mythology, as these archetypes are derived from the very mythos that Dave Filoni is trying to recreate. Like the original trilogy, this show is purposefully retelling what Joseph Campbell called the monomyth. And just like with the original trilogy, Star Wars Rebels uses the monomyth as a strict guide throughout the entirety of the story. The episodic structure, however, is not what you would call typical of a Star Wars movie. Instead, Filoni uses a more television approach to his television show.
And I have you guys.
And I can't help but be reminded of classic 80s and 90s television series like
Wouldn't you rather
Full
have
House.
an Elvis party? Get an idea. Instead of all those goofy little hats, your friends can wear little tiny sideburns.
Family Matters.
I was hoping you could give me a lift, but hey, I'll just spend the next 2 weeks with you.
Come on, let's go.
What?
Fresh Prince.
It's full-scale psychological warfare, right? You gotta act like you got this tick, right? Like the Army did this experiment on you, right? That just went terribly wrong.
And Saved by the Bell.
You bet. Today at 4 o'clock, I will be
in detention. I told you not to use this telephone on school property again.
Let me explain. One of the great benefits to the classic TV sitcom is that almost every episode is self-contained. The adventure lasts the length of the episode, which means that the cliffhangers are rare, and each episode is approached to capture the audience as if it were the first time they'd ever watched the show. Each episode is a drop in the character development bucket, so to speak, that takes seasons to fill because the showrunners are busy trying to entertain you. This creates a sense of balance and predictability that, when threatened by major story events,
Name? Yes. I once had a real name. So long ago, I don't remember. Now I am called More.
is a real feeling of jarring anxiety. Characters are fleshed out over seasons, not episodes, and this gradual growth is ultimately more rewarding when the story gets more serious. The family TV sitcom of the 80s and 90s also has, above all else, a moral of the story with every episode.
I'm not going to try to teach you anymore. If all I do is try, that means I don't truly believe I can succeed. So from now on, I will teach you. Look, I may fail, you may fail, but there is no try.
I understand, Master.
Let's see if you do.
The ah moment. That gives the audience the sense of love, caring, and family. These moments are meant to be reinforcing to parents, learning moments for kids, and character developing for the whole story. It also creates a sense of watchability to every episode because each is meant to be watched and enjoyed on its own, while still adding to the story as a whole. This motif, however, doesn't come without its flaws. Rebels is not the same as the movies in many ways, which can easily be a hindrance, and despite my undying love for the show, I'm not going to ignore it.
What would you do if I sang out of tune?
What makes both the original and prequel trilogies great? Well, it's a lot of things, but one of them is the sheer amount of story shoved into them. I mean, kind of a lot happens in these movies. This gives a sense that the movie's pacing is fast and exciting. In A New Hope, Luke goes from being a moisture farmer
Oh, Biggs is right. I'm never gonna get out of here.
to an escapee of the Empire
Oh my, I'd forgotten how much I hate space travel.
to a Jedi in training to being captured by the Empire
Boy, it's lucky you had these compartments.
I use them for smuggling. I never thought I'd be smuggling myself in them.
to an escapee of the Empire again
Run, Luke, run.
to a rebel pilot
You sure you can handle this shit, sir? Luke is the best pushed pilot in the Outer Rim territories.
to finally savior of the rebellion, all in a 2-hour time frame. The development of the characters is also streamlined to fit within the movie. No need for a slow burn here. Movies have a lot to say and not a lot of time to say it, so characters are introduced in an amazingly effective way. You get a sense of who they are right off the bat, from the dreamer and would-be hero to the calm and collected philosophical teacher.
Hello there.
George Lucas absolutely nails quick character development.
There'll be no escape for the princess this time.
The story and the character development are also intertwined. This is a further streamlining process that never sacrifices story for development and vice versa. Luke isn't just a dreamer and moisture farmer, but he's also the new owner of 2 droids
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
What's this?
that the Empire is looking for.
These aren't the droids you're looking for.
Anakin isn't just a junkyard slave,
I'm a person, and my name is Anakin.
but a selfless boy that shelters a Jedi and a queen from a sandstorm,
I'm building a droid. You want to see?
Your son was kind enough to offer a shelter.
and he seems to know things and have capabilities that he shouldn't.
I'm the only human who can do it.
You must have Jedi reflexes if you race bots. Don't do that.
Never in Star Wars movies is the story taken on an unnecessary tangent to help develop the characters, and the story is also never delivered without adding character development to it. Do you see what I mean?
There was no father. I carried him, I gave birth, I raised him. I can't explain what happened.
Even when Grand Moff Tarkin delivers the news that the Imperial Senate has been dissolved, he does so in a scene showcasing his confidence in his power. Vader's position under him,
Enough of this. Vader, release him.
As you wish.
and everyone else's position under Vader. This scene also gives a glimpse into Vader's devotion to this ancient religion, developing the audience's understanding of the Force, as well as what Vader will do to someone that insults it. That's a lot for a scene that lasts about 5 minutes. These stories and the time it takes to imbibe them are very approachable, or maybe more accurately, they are digestible. If you've got 7 hours to kill, then you've got one of the most watchable trilogies on planet Earth to enjoy. This approachable nature to the first 2 trilogies is
Most impressive.
and arguably not possible for a TV series. Star Wars Rebels has 75 episodes, not counting shorts, which have a combined runtime of nearly 30 hours. For people that want the hero's journey delivered concisely or can't stomach the criticisms I mentioned earlier, this is a serious problem. Rebels, like most full series, is kind of long. Character development is delivered in arcs, in other words tangents, rather than being intertwined with a quickly moving narrative. Obi-Wan, for instance, uses this moment of hyperspace travel to train Luke while they're on their way to Alderaan, which is in stark contrast to the entire episodes where Kanan is training Ezra that have nothing directly to do with the overall story. Also, while Ezra is capable from the beginning, it takes him the entire first season to truly be helpful, while Luke destroys the Death Star a little more than an hour after we're introduced to him. Further, there are also mini arcs that are meant to establish character development for those that are not the main characters. Lucas does this also in his trilogies, but we never spend more than a few minutes away from the main arc, and each arc is still important to the main narrative. Rebels spends an awful amount of time developing characters with story arcs that have nothing to do with Ezra becoming a Jedi and saving Lothal from the Empire. But this is looking at Rebels all wrong, because the problem with filler episodes is not that people don't crave more story. I think most of us fans love as much Star Wars as they can give us. You see, the main problem with filler episodes is that, when done poorly, they feel very unnecessary and are not really rewatchable. I'm going to start this last point by saying that I don't have a problem with Jar Jar. And we're going there for just a second. I mean it. I didn't mind him when I saw episode 1 in the theaters 24 years ago, and I don't mind him still. I understand why he's there and what George Lucas's purpose was for bringing him along, but the Clone Wars arcs with him in it are rough. As a matter of fact, there are a few rough arcs in Clone Wars, and if I'm being completely honest, it really takes a couple of seasons for them to fall into an enjoyable groove. If we were to study the final season of Clone Wars, for instance, my bet is that most of us rewatched the first 4 and last 4 episodes and skip those boring middle 4 episodes like the plague. I do want to reiterate how much I love this show, because it really is a treasure.
Maybe a little better.
But, very much like The Bad Batch is right now, there is about 25% of the show that I don't care to rewatch at all. This is completely different from Star Wars Rebels. Almost all of that show is rewatchable, and only a few episodes in all 4 seasons are questionable or boring. So, what is so different between Rebels and Clone Wars? Both series have arcs to develop the main characters, both have themes that mature greatly with each season, and both have better budgets as the seasons progress. Heck, both are made by the same guy. So what's the big difference? Well, it is that classic TV sitcom motif. Each episode of Rebels feels like it's handled as a truly standalone story, like Clone Wars, but Rebels has a family unit that it follows. One of the downfalls about telling a story about a plethora of characters is that it's hard to care about them as much as the characters of a more concentrated story. Remember when Clone Wars came out? It took seasons for people to get on board with Ahsoka, and now she is one of the most beloved characters out there. Now, I understand that the shows were made differently on purpose. George was experimenting with this World War II reels kind of storytelling that I think was absolutely brilliant. I had never seen someone try to do something like that in modern television, but George Lucas does what he wants. However, creating story arcs about a whole bunch of different characters every arc has its negatives. Rebels may not have the scale, budget, or adult themes of Clone Wars, but each episode tells a small story about a specific member of one family. A family that lives together, fights for a common cause together, and bears the individual burdens of the other family members together. Even the episodes where the story focuses on just a couple of characters outside the Ghost feel important because of the absence of the main characters. You see, the classic family sitcom develops story and characters by making everything ultimately about the family. The foundation of their moral system in most classic TV shows is based off the religious foundation that was more present in the family unit prior to the mid-90s. In this case, you can simply change the word God with the Force, and everything else falls into place. Everyone has a role, everyone is equally important, and everyone loves each other greatly. There's a dad and a mom. There are kids and a family pet. And there's a funny uncle who hangs around because he's lost his home and he has nowhere to go. Even the side characters have a familial feeling, like that cousin.
Not him.
That most of the family can't stand, but need help from occasionally. The aunt that is wise, honest, and caring that the family loves to have over.
All right if I tag along?
The more the merrier.
Or the funny grandpa.
You lied to me? I knew I liked you. One of my best friends was a Jedi. I'm pretty sure we were friends.
That through his grandchildren learns the lessons of selflessness and loyalty.
Adam, for that boy, there is nothing I would not do.
These stories are about forgiveness.
Sorry. I'm sorry. I forgive you, Sibo.
Understanding.
You're right. I can't protect Ezra forever. Not even from himself. All I can do is what I've done.
And compassion.
I won't leave you. Not this time.
And we must never forget that with every good classic TV sitcom, every family must learn the lessons of loss. With their moral of the story structure to every episode, characters are developed into lovable and well-rounded versions of themselves. Each episode has a feeling of purpose, even if it seemingly has nothing to do with the main plot, because the characters learn something. This type of storytelling provides much-needed nuance to the characters, making their decisions believable rather than rushed.
You don't believe in the Force, do you?
Oh, you mean that thing you just found out about like 3 hours ago and are now judging me for not believing in it?
Rebels is approachable because each episode can be enjoyed on its own. The story may take nearly 30 hours to complete, but in that regard, it feels more like a book. Every minute in the story feels important, and the story never needs to sacrifice important details to fit into a 2-hour window when it has 30 hours to tell the whole thing. I kind of wish that other shows understood this concept a little better. Like I said earlier, it is one of the criticisms that I have that seems relevant to every Star Wars series, sans Rebels. The series in Star Wars seem to follow the ideology to be greater than the sum of their parts, and I would agree that most of the shows achieve that goal, but it doesn't always have to be at the expense of certain episodes. Not every episode needs to be some gigantic space battle or lightsaber duel, but every episode can be enjoyable and important to the overall development of the story and characters. While deliberate or not, Rebels used a tried and tested motif that was designed and honed over decades of television. It shouldn't shock anyone that if you're making a TV series, then perhaps you ought to look at what works for the other TV series first. That's all I have for now. I hope I earned your subscription today. Next time we'll be talking about this guy. If you want to know why I believe Star Wars is more than just a movie, then check out this video. Thanks for watching. See you next time.